What's up guys, it's Xavier Peaks, and today I'm going to give you my 5 short but sweet manga recommendations. So let's get straight into the video. I pick short mangas because I know with school, work, and everything else everyone has going on, it's going to be hard for a person to read about 200 chapters of manga in an hour or two. But with my short mangas, you can most likely read them within a day or two, or maybe within 5 to 6 hours. When I say mangas that are short, I mean mangas under 50 chapters. All 5 of these mangas have 50 chapters, and the closest one to 50 is probably Kimono Jihen. But in the shortest is The Horizon with only 20 chapters. Also keep in mind that all 5 of these mangas are either ongoing or completed. It really didn't matter when I chose them if they were ongoing or completed. The first manga I'm going to recommend you is called Kimono Jihen, which is also currently airing on Funimation every Sunday. Kimono Jihen is about a half-ghoul, half-human boy named Kabane. Kabane is in search of his parents who abandoned him at a young age and only left him with the life nil calculus. The only keepsake that Kabane has from his parents is called the life calculus, which is a part of the nil calculus which will play an important role in the story. A nil calculus is an object that every Kemono tribal chief has, and the calculi are suited to match the tribal chief's power. Throughout the story, Kabane is attacked by many people who want his nil calculus, but Kabane has buddies including Inugami, Chiki, and Akira, who all work for Inugami's detective agency. Inugami's detective agency investigates Kemono-related incidents because they're all Kemonos, including Kabane, Chiki, Inugami, and Akira. Kimono Jihen has many arcs revolving around many characters, respectively with Chiki and Akira and Kabane, as Kabane's arc takes over the whole story, but Chiki and Akira also get their own arcs respectively. Although Kimono Jihen is the longest out of the 5 manga on my list, at 49 chapters, it gets most of the main story accomplished by chapter 22, if not 21 or 20. Overall, Kimono Jihen was a good read. It only took me about 5 to 6 hours, but that's because every chapter except for the half chapters are about 55 pages. If you're a fan of supernatural shonen manga, I would naturally recommend this to you, but also if you're a fan of clueless MCs like Saitama, because him and Kabane are alike in many ways, I would also recommend this to you. The second manga I'm going to recommend is called Jajika no Ronnie. The story is about a boy named Shin who wants to enact revenge on his 4 childhood bullies. Shin's childhood was picture book perfect until his 4 bullies came along and ruined it for him by killing his parents in a car accident and incapacitating his brother, leaving him in a comatose state. After the death of his parents, Shin moved in with his grandpa, who was a member of a Japanese covert ops team. The main story takes place a few years after the incident between Shin and the bullies. Now Shin is a first year in high school and, trained by his grandpa, is ready to take his gruesome revenge against the bullies that made his life a living hell. The manga is currently ongoing as it has 21 chapters and it updates about every week or two, and Shin is only taking revenge on 2 out of the 5 bullies, which leaves room for much potential for the story to improve. Because right now, in my opinion, it's focusing too much on his revenge, but it doesn't focus on his current life. It only focuses on him getting his revenge and him scheming and coming up with ways to get his revenge. But in my opinion, I think the story needs to gravitate more towards him and his surroundings and not just him focusing on his revenge. If you're into horror and psychological manga, this manga is the perfect one for you. But if you're not into tragedy, I wouldn't recommend reading this, because the first 5 chapters are a tragedy, but the rest, in my opinion, isn't a tragedy. It's more psychological. The story is about a mistreated palace guard named Faye who one day stumbles across a sword that tells him to buy it. Now Faye has a unique skill called gluttony, which means that he has to kill monsters in order for his skill to be satisfied. If his skill is not kept in check, Faye will ultimately get consumed by the skill, which means that every night he has to abandon his palace guard duties to kill monsters, or he won't survive. As Faye starts to get stronger and the story progresses, He abandons his position as palace guard and starts to adventure with his sword. His sword is one of the 7 deadly sins, greed. And greed persuades Faye to adventure with him in order to satisfy his gluttony skill, which technically may never be satisfied. But the end goal is for Faye to conquer his skill and to not rely on greed. While this story is the least favorite out of all 5 mangas, because it's mainly just predictable and I know what Faye is going to do and what he's not going to do, because I've read many stories like this, it's overall still a good read. It's ongoing right now, hasn't updated in a couple of months, but it's currently sitting at 31 chapters and you could read it really anywhere, even though out of all of them this was the hardest to find a place to read it. Would you let humanity live another 1,000 years, or would you vote to let them perish at that very moment? That's what the gods were deciding in Records of Ragnarok, which is my 4th manga that I'm recommending to you. Record of Ragnarok takes place at the Council of Valhalla, where the gods meet every 1,000 years to determine the fate of humanity. This 1,000 years, it was written in 2019, so I guess the 1,000th year would technically be 2019. They decided that they wanted to kill off humanity, but a Valkyrie named Brunhild decides otherwise. She offers the gods a deal. If the 13 strongest humans in human history beat the gods 7 times in a 13-round death match, then the gods will let humanity live another 1,000 years. But if the gods win 7 out of the 13 matches, then humanity perishes. The gods, being the gods of course, took this offer from Brunhild and they accepted the fight. And that's where the main story picks up as of chapter 1. Currently there are 43 chapters, and the last time I read it I think was maybe a week ago, because that was the last updated chapter. But it only took me 5 to 6 hours to catch up when I initially read it, and it only had about 30 chapters. Overall, it was a good read. The plot was kind of unpredictable because I didn't know like which god would win this battle, which human would win this battle. But other than that, yeah, the story is really good. And if you like fighting shonen manga, then I would recommend that to you. It'd be perfect. Moving on to my last recommendation. It's actually a manhwa and not a manga, which means it was written by a Korean author. My last recommendation is called The Horizon, and as I said earlier, it's a manhwa, but it's about 20 chapters, it's very short, and it's the only manga on my list that is completed so far. The Horizon is about a boy who lives in a war-torn country and is just moving forward because his parents have died and everyone he loves has died. But along the way, he runs into a little girl, and it's basically the story of their adventures as they strive to move forward. Overall, it's a great story, and the ending kind of caught me by surprise. So if you're not into tragedy manga slash manhwas, I would not recommend you reading this. But overall, it was really a 10 out of 10 and a great read, and it only took me like 1 to 2 hours, I think. If you made it this far into the video, thank you, and if you liked it, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you'll visit my channel for more anime and manga content.